Hello, my name is Marta Giralt and I'm a lecturer in University of Limerick, and I'm going to be presenting here with my colleague
Limerick, also from the University of Limerick.
the paper entitled Developing Critical Agentive Digital Literacies within Erasmus plus Virtual Exchange Cultural Encounters from Obligation to Realization.
So I'll start off just giving a rough overview of the items that we're going to address today. We speak a little bit about our rationale and homophily, and also going on to talk about critical digital pedagogies, looking at the socio-political engagement of students and an agentive dimension to all of these subjects. We'll then move on to talk about the implementation of exchange and virtual exchanges, the activities that we use, and how we believe this is a vehicle for creating critical digital pedagogies. We'll give a little bit about our methodology that we used and some discussion on the data that we gleaned from students. And then we'll end up final considerations and conclusions. So, a little bit about the rationale here. We conducted a survey of over 50 of our students, and we discovered, rather to our shock and dismay, a certain localization of their viewpoints. They cared little about political issues outside of Ireland, so they have a much a localized mindset. And we discovered elsewhere that this is a form of homophily, a form of balkanization of their ideas. They cared more about their own local social, political, sporting activities than they did about global issues. Yeah, so we believe this also was limited to certain forms of leisure and entertainment rather than being politically or socially engaged. Other writers have written about this, and we have found it to be true as well. Now, as part of our rationale, as we strongly believe here in this statement from Claire Cramsh about the role of educators, foreign language educators, we have to rethink what our role is and how we conceive of culture, especially today in this era marked by various contradictions. There is increased diversity, but also a growing homogeneity, and it can increase multilingualism, but there's also a growing monolingual mentality there. And we've discovered this amongst our own students. There's been increased breakdown of national linguistic boundaries, but also an increased control and assessment practice, as Claire Cramsh says. So, we'd like to talk a little bit about education, political engagement, and critical pedagogies. We've got some interesting quotations here that reveal the same mindset that we have. Schroeter here talks about individuals have to be educated to become critical and self-aware citizens. So we have to educate our students, in order for them to act meaningfully in their own surroundings. We agree with Ned that all education is political. And one of the goals of education is that I can judge the world and our place within it. Indeed, it is to be critical, is to judge. And as Mike Byram has said, language teaching is a political action in and itself. And we shouldn't shy away from that either. So as part of this here, we've come across intercultural citizenship. It's been defined in various ways, but the originator was Mike Byram again, and he talks about the development of competencies to engage with others in political activity across linguistic and cultural boundaries, both within and across state frontiers. So it's getting our students out of their localized mindset is what we're about. So to create these international bonds and a reduction of prejudice that we're seeing such a rise of these days, populism and prejudice. So these are the intended outcomes and cosmopolitan aspirations that Mike has talked about. They may well evolve at the same time. So this intercultural citizenship education creates the potential for dialogue amongst different nations. As part of this, we've created our own ideas around an agentive and critical digital literacies. Critical in the sense of being able to critique something, but also in the other sense of it being totally necessary. We discovered, as we mentioned earlier, there's less engagement amongst our own language learners. But They saw second language acquisition over the actual content and the intellectual and applied content of that. Amongst our students, we found this perception that they only saw language or second, third language acquisition as an instrument. Language is simply an instrument that allows them to communicate, not critically. Miriam Hawke was also had an approach to this critical digital pedagogies that Miriam talks about there. Her approach is one of teacher dialogue and educate teachers. Ours is somewhat different, and we talk about the students. We begin with the students, whereas ours is a bottom-up approach. We talk about the agency within and outside of second language acquisition. So within, it's the individual, it's a socially, culturally capacity to act, to be dynamic, shaped by our interactions and various other contextual factors. The outside is the reaction with the real world. How do you read? How do you understand the world critically? There's that word again. It keeps coming up amongst Miriam Hawke's and ours. So the belief that we act in the world to change it for the betterment through communication, through action. Okay. So the agentive for us is, as we have defined in other places, the agentive is part of this critical digital literacies as the current and liminal competencies. They're liminal in the sense that they need to be updated as we engage with technology, we engage with social media. They're liminal, requiring constant updates, regular updates. And they're necessary, we believe, to effectively study, work, and indeed function in a modern society. And we've put in this question about COVID. I'm sorry we have to mention this, but COVID is exacerbating the situation. People are becoming more polarized, more homophily on the rise. You can see this, and it's exacerbated by COVID. So I'll pass you on now over to my colleague, Marta.
So after all that first part of the presentation, talking about the framework behind our study, I'm going to talk now about virtual exchanges. As Liam mentioned, we believe that virtual exchanges are the vehicle for the critical digital pedagogies. And for our study here, we're going to present data from virtual exchange, one type of virtual exchange, which is the one that is provided by an outside service, non-profit organization. In our case, we'll be sharing perspectives. We'll talk in a second. And just I'm showing here this definition of this type of virtual exchange as it is different of other types, maybe based on tandem learning. So that's a virtual exchange with a service provider approach. So now I'm just going to talk about Erasmus+ Virtual Exchange. That's a flagship program established and funded by the European Union. And our study is based on that Erasmus+ was offering. We are going to be talking about cultural encounters. Cultural Encounters is a program that every year offers different topics and students engage online to discuss about this. Our data shows the engagement of our students in the newcomers and nationalism from 2018 and the cultural encounters of the perspective on populism in 2019. And just to give you a quick overview of what's this virtual exchange, is provided by Sharing Perspectives Foundation. If you are interested in more information, you can just go here to the link. And usually it lasts 10 weeks. And in our case, we use 2 iterations, the 2018 and 2019, for our data. It's in English as a lingua franca. And the students, when they participate in this exchange, receive a digital badge. And the main things they do during this exchange is watch a video lecture just to get a little bit of contextual information on the topic they have to discuss, a bit of background. Then they have their 2-hour seminar sessions every week during the 10 weeks with a facilitator, mediated by a facilitator. And also they have to write a reflective diary every week, and they conduct also short interviews to create sort of a narrative, and then in the case of UL they have to write a reflective essay that they submit to us. So that's the virtual exchange that we implemented in our course. So the module in UL where we implemented this virtual exchange is a language and technology module with second-year students of applied languages. And you'll see we are going to present data from the 2 iterations, 2018 and 2019. The first one has 80 students, the second one has 6 students, so there is a reason for that we'll talk about later on. So our module lasts 12 weeks and the Cultural Encounters program is 10 weeks. And the main aim of this module is that our students become optimal learners using technology for their language learning. So the data we're going to be using are for 2 different years. From 2018 we have surveys, we recorded focus group, and then the final assignments of the students, and the same for the 2019. We don't have survey because it was just 6 students, so we have the reflective assignments and the recorded focus groups. The way we analyze our data, it's we follow a quantitative approach for the surveys plus qualitative using thematic analysis and a corpus-based. We created a small specialized corpus. We use a sketch engine, and also for the thematic analysis we use NVivo. So now let's see what is our data telling us. So from the first iteration, 2018, the students that participated show that the virtual exchange had a very positive impact for them, especially as it broadened their thinking perspectives and enhanced their critical thinking. Have a lot of quotations. I'm just showing here some of them. So we can see how one student said, encourage us to think critically, challenge the views of the other participants. Also, just saying that the students could see that learning a language actually is not just about grammar and speaking, it's also about culture and points of view. And in this particular case, this student seems that has to go abroad and feels more ready for the intercultural experience that's going to mean for him. However, in this group of 80 students, for some of the students, the experience was not as positive, as they believed that development of their intercultural competence and the soft skills associated with it are not part of their language learning. So some of the students were not that satisfied. They thought that they didn't find any benefit as a learner of a language, and they got to understand different cultures, but that didn't really help them on their language learning. So that was a bit of a shock for us. And then, so we got all this feedback from doing the thematic analysis. So then we decided to build a corpus and try to go a little bit deeper and see exactly the impact that exchange had on our students. So we create the corpus, and we just start doing some occurrences for keywords: learn, opinion, perspective, open, view, politic. That has the wild card symbol, because we went just looking for the the first dilemma of the word, engage, critical, and we saw that it had a lot of occurrences. So then we just look in more detail these occurrences, and we are just showing here some examples, but yes, it was some intercultural learning or learning of different soft skills like listening skills or critical learning skills and public speaking skills. So learning occurred, so it was a positive impact that had. Also in reference about the intercultural aspect, political, which was a part of our motivation to include these virtual exchanges, as we believe education has to be political. Yeah, so they mention as well the political aspects that the exchange brought to them, and action as in relation to their agentive nature of the virtual exchange. So yes, that we have also some occurrences here about the actions that the students seem to want to take after participating. So then we connect this with really this experiential learning. So is this experiential learning promoting agency in our students? And in this iteration of the changes, yes, we found this. We have different examples of students saying that becoming a participant or experiencing this virtual exchange push them to do something. For example, the student B says, using my group as an example, we took it upon ourselves to make a Facebook group so that we can all stay in contact if we so wish. And I believe that the Spanish students are helping another student, which was a Syrian student, in finding scholarships to master's degrees programs in Europe and in Canada. So all this after just 10 weeks of knowing each other. So students are actually seeing how other peers from global peers are having difficulties to have access to postgraduate program. Maybe they're deciding to maybe do something to help them. Also, student D here, we have a quotation that he's deciding to start learning Arabic because of the interest that rose from talking to people that speak Arabic. So yes, we see all these examples of agency among our students. So now it's another important feedback we got from that cohort, which was, would they prefer to have the virtual exchange as mandatory or as optional? And for our surprise, most of the students were in favor more of a optional. So at that point, after all the first iteration, we had some thoughts. So do we do it again? Do we fail better because some of the students were not very happy? Do we have necessity of including activities for developing intercultural citizenship in a language technology module? So with all this, do we need to really push our students out of their comfort zone? So that's how we finished that semester. And then the following year, we decide, okay, now we're going to do it on a voluntary basis. In that case, yeah, all the students felt the gains, the same thing, no broadening perspective, seeing how they develop the critical thinking. So we have here some quotations. So the students seeing how, realizing how narrow-minded and biased they were before participating in the exchange, or maybe learning that sometimes having different opinions could be and having their own way of seeing things is a positive thing. However, it was no resistance at all because they did that in a voluntary basis, but again, the students felt a little bit of resistance at the beginning of the semester when starting the module and the exchange, because they really felt out of their comfort zone, facing the unknown. So again, is this idea of homophily rising again? Are they don't want to really know what's going on somewhere else? They're the political, social issues. They want to just be in their comfortable bubble. So again, here we all just have discussing these political issues, which was one of our main aims for including the virtual exchanges. So now, data summary. So both groups had similar learning outcomes and gains. It was an initial resistance for the first cohort based on not wanting to get out of their comfort zone, and they're relating this to the language learning as the language just or learning a language just as a vehicle. Also, the second group, resistance for getting out of their comfort zone. But in both groups, and they went through this final realization. So they both were at the end seeing all these benefits and gains. And just a quick quotation here of that shows this final realization. So now we are going to go to our conclusions, and my colleague Liam Murray is joining for this. So.
So the pedagogical considerations that we'd like to offer you for discussion. So the virtual exchanges, their activities are an effective vehicle for creating what we've termed critical digital what Miriam Hawkes calls critical digital pedagogy. We talk about critical digital literacies. We do believe there's this self-empowerment cycle after the virtual exchange. The agency builds up confidence and confident agency, both for personal development and social responsibility. This, we believe, are the true nature of education, to think critically. So our question's open for reflection and debate is, well, what guide our actions as educators? Why are we educating? For what purpose? How can you bring the self-realization at the beginning of this process? We've shown you the benefits when students actualize this self-realization at the end of this experiential experience and learning, right at the end. But how do we bring this forward to entice more students to engage with this optional? Now it's an option, hence the difference in numbers, as Marta explained. How do we bring this forward and get investment and a buy-in from our students? And finally, can you speed up this self-realization, which is based on the whole experience?
So here you have all the references, and then thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you can contact us here on, maybe posted in the conference website. Okay.
Thank you very much for listening.